But here are these two random people I've only known for 2 years, and so he's part of the family now. And he's 6 months in Michigan City, and then he gets sentenced to home detention. And this is a real problem for a lot of guys and women coming out of jail. They get sentenced to home detention, and there's no home to go to. This is probably 95% of the people in jail. There are exceptions. Most of them get out, and you're scrambling to find somebody that has a landline telephone in their house. That's all that's required to be on home detention, so they can stay with them. So they're trying to find an old friend or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever. So Robert's on home detention, and as we get closer to it, we start, it's like dawning on us that, we've talked a really, just like much of my Christian life up until that point, we've talked a really good game with Robert, calling him our son, and it hadn't really cost us anything to do it. We visited him twice a month in Michigan City, but that was the extent of it. There was no cost, no sacrifice for us to call him our son. Now he's on home detention, and now we have to really think about this, because had it been Calvin or Ruby or Silas, it would have been an automatic, a no-brainer. Nobody would have questioned our decision to move Calvin back into the house if he was on home detention, or Ruby or Silas. But it was different with Robert, and we learned something through this process that, we think we're following God, my wife and I, and we try, and sometimes it's a small step forward, and you have no idea where your foot's going to land. And you don't know what the outcome is going to be. You don't know what the end result is. You don't know what the destination is. So you're taking a blind step, and you're hoping and praying and trusting that you're really actually moving in the right direction. However, what's interesting is not everybody in your life is going to be hearing the same thing from God. In fact, there are some times when everybody else in your life is going to be telling you that God is telling them just the exact opposite. And we heard all the reasons, all the worst case scenario outcomes of Robert moving in with us. But what was the alternative? Right? Much like the jail ministry, which is a very neat and clean and convenient ministry. It can be, because we go in and we leave and they stay there. Their mess stays there, their addiction stays there, their chaos stays there, their dysfunction stays there, and we leave and we get to feel good about ourselves for going into the jail. And whatever it is that we do, all the good things that are going on, Bible studies, programs, but then we get to leave. But when they get out and they see that all these great people that were in the jail are now absent and nowhere to be found, that's when they really need us. That's when they really need the church. So it's great that we were there for Robert while he was in prison, but when he gets out, then what? Because most of the people getting out of jail, this is their future after jail, is they step out of the doors of the jail, they just walk out, and hopefully they have somebody to pick them up, but maybe they don't, and so they walk back to Elkhart or South Bend, and they have no job, no car, no money. In fact, they're probably in debt because they have court fees and fines. No family, no friends, drug addictions, tattoos, felony convictions. Life is just really hard for most guys after jail, with or without God. It's harder with God because now you're wanting to make a change and there's nobody around to help you. And so life quickly happens and you go back to what you know because you're in survival mode. So our choice was we could pat Robert on the back and say, well, we'll help you with this and that. Good luck. But we called him our son for 6 months. So we moved him in. He was with us for about 6 months. And all these things that were on the final day of judgment that Jesus says we're going to be separated into the goats and the sheep. And the criteria is really interesting because it's not what church we attended or how many times we went to church or what translation of the Bible we read. It's these really hard things like, did you clothe me and did you feed me and did you visit me and did you show me hospitality? All these things that you can't plan into your life. You can't set a schedule and say, well, you can call me at this time on this day if you need help with something. And it's basically a list of what a lot of people need once they leave jail or prison. And so while Robert was with us, we got to help him with all these things. Well, how do you find a job with multiple felony convictions? When you have no references, no resources, you don't know anybody, how do you find an apartment? How do you find somebody who will rent to you who's not a slumlord in Elkhart or Goshen? How do you budget? He had twin boys. They were a year old when he got out. So they were with us on the weekends with Robert. And so you're 19 years old. You've never really had any parents or a father figure. How do you raise newborn kids? So we got to help him with some of this stuff. And there was nothing glamorous about it. It was very frustrating and hard and inconvenient. And we screwed up a lot all the time because we didn't know what we were doing. I don't know what I'm doing half the time. You think that you're supposed to go this way, and so you go. And you trust that God's grace is large enough to cover any mistakes or faults. We trust that Robert's grace was big enough to forgive us when we screwed up with him. There's this great passage in the Screwtape Letters, if you've ever read that by C.S. Lewis, where it's two demons who are having a discussion, an uncle demon and a nephew demon, on how to tempt and keep their person that they were assigned to from God. And so Screwtape is talking to Wormwood, his nephew, and he says that sometimes that God, in an effort to teach his people to walk on their own 2 feet, will sometimes withdraw his fingers from them. And if their will to walk is really there, he's happy even with their stumbles. And so what we're looking for at the jail ministry are people who will stumble along with us, where we're not waiting until we have this all figured out. There was no book that's written that we were able to read to tell us how to incorporate Robert into the family. We didn't know what we were doing. We had no idea. But, when we're teaching our kids to walk and we withdraw our hands from them, they fall down, they stumble, they try and get back up, they fall down again. We don't get mad at them. We're not disappointed in them. We're thrilled that they're trying to walk. We just kind of know they're going to fall down, right? Because they're babies. They've never done this before. And so I hope that's God's attitude towards us. I hope that he's happy with us if we're trying, even if we're stumbling. More so than if we say, I've never done this before. A lot could go wrong. It could really screw this up. And so we're just going to sit back and play it safe. We'll refer him to an agency who can help him with some of this stuff. So all this to say, the philosophy of the jail ministry. Our job as assistant chaplains, as volunteers, it's really not to go in and try and fix people or save them. God will do that. That's what he specializes in. We can't save people. We'll get very frustrated very quickly if we think it's our job to go and fix people and to save them. Our job is to go and make friends. That's my job description. Go and make friends. So I get to go to jail every day and sit down and talk to people who are really great guys. 99% of them are just really good guys. Most of them have grown up in really difficult life circumstances that I have a hard time even fathoming. They made some poor choices, but you sit down and you talk to them and you realize if I had been raised like Doug was raised, I would probably be where Doug is. If I was raised like James was raised, like Robert was raised, I would probably be where Robert is. That's really the only difference. I think I struggle with just as much as the guys in jail struggle with. It's just different things. It's easier to hide greed or selfishness or pride or anger or jealousy or lust. Those things I can keep internally, and not anybody really has to know about it. Sometimes I may not even be aware of some of the sins inside of me. I think sometimes our sins that we can hide are deadlier than the sins that are obvious. At least with somebody who has a problem with meth, you can identify the problem, you know what to work on. You may not know what's going on inside of me. I may not know what's going on inside of Marlene. And so we have the only difference between us and the guys in jail are the sins that we struggle with. And so you sit down, and any condemnation or judgment you feel towards people who might be in jail is quickly erased and replaced by compassion and mercy, because you realize, man, this guy is just like I am. There's no difference. How can I sit back and judge him when I have just as much of a mess in my own life? It's just not obvious because I'm not in jail. And I had the good fortune of growing up in a stable, healthy family. What we're looking for at the jail ministry are people to come in, not to lead another Bible study, not to do another program. Those are all great things. And we have a lot of stuff going on inside the jail ministry. 100 different programs and Bible studies every month happen inside the jail ministry. But I never want our programs and our Bible studies to get in the way of our ministry. I always want to be thinking that the reason we go in and do a Bible study in the book of John, or lead Toastmasters or the Truth Project or Financial Peace or the Crossing, is so that we can get to know these guys personally and develop a personal relationship with them so that the jail ministry can be extended outside the walls of the Elkhart County Jail. Because when they go to prison or work release or home detention, the need for the church to be there for people is much greater than it is when they're inside jail. And what will happen is your life will be changed more, just as much, if not more, than their life will. So with Robert, he's back at work release now, moved back out on his own, an apartment in Goshen, made a bad choice, now he's back at work release. But I don't know how to measure the success of the jail ministry because I don't know what's going on inside everybody's heart. Hopefully, Robert has successfully identified one more thing that doesn't work in his life, and he won't do it again. One thing I do know, though, is my family's, me and my wife and our kids' lives are forever changed because of Robert, because of Doug, because of all these guys that we meet in jail, all these women that we meet in jail. I think sometimes the jail ministry is probably just as much a ministry to the volunteers as it is to the actual inmates. This is a two-way relationship, and I learned just as much from these guys in jail than they will ever learn from me. So I'd encourage you, if you're interested, we're meeting somewhere, I think, during the Sunday school hour. If you have more specific questions about the jail ministry, how to get involved, different opportunities, I would love to talk with you more about that. But I really appreciate the time that you've given me this morning. Thank you for your support. This church has been very faithful in supporting the jail ministry. Mike Kupke, who was there before me, myself, we're not employees of the Sheriff's Department or Elkhart County. It's all privately funded through a nonprofit. Most of the donations come from churches, and you guys have been just a very faithful supporter through the years, and I really appreciate the support. So with that, I'll close, and I look forward to talking to more of you during the Sunday school hour, and hopefully see some of you in jail. Thanks.